Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, a look at Cuba after Fidel, China's troubles with PR, that's public relations of course, the chances of resolving the Kenya crisis, and a potential Oscar winner this weekend. But first, a new country was born this week, becoming the world's 193rd independent nation, Kosovo. But while the Kosovo Albanians have been celebrating, Serbia has denounced the move as illegal, with tens of thousands of people taking to the streets of Belgrade. Violence broke out late Thursday night, with mobs attacking the US and other embassies in Serbia's capital. In anger, basically, at Western support for Kosovo's independence. The US was one of the first countries to recognize an independent Kosovo. And Washington's special envoy to Kosovo, Ambassador Frank Wisner, joins me now from New York. And incidentally, there he is, and with me here in the studio is Dragan Zupanjevac. Thank you for being with us, Dragan, who is the Serbian Charge d'Affaires in London. Ambassador Frank, beginning with you, as you saw those images over the last 24 hours of the US Embassy, parts of the US Embassy being put on fire and so on, and some of the other scenes, did you have any doubts for a moment about whether Kosovan independence was maybe not a good idea?
I never had a moment's doubt. There was an inevitability. It was impossible for Kosovo to return to Serbian rule, and it was impossible, as the Secretary General repeatedly pointed out, for the UN to continue to exercise a trusteeship. There had to be a conclusion, and the conclusion is an independence. The young state has the necessary attributes to be able to succeed. It's committed itself to the highest standards of minority right protections, and I'm reasonably optimistic it can make its way.
The Serbian foreign minister has said that this move provided, quote, a toolkit for separatists, meaning, for example, the Kurds in Turkey and Iraq. Do you think this is a dangerous precedent to set?
No, I think Kosovo stands uniquely. It stands unique, and it stands on its own. After all, where else did you see such a massive exercise in ethnic cleansing, the intervention of NATO, the imposition of a Security Council resolution, 9 years of UN rule, the composition of an international negotiation under a special envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations? In short, I can think of no other ethnic or territorial conflict anywhere in the world with those attributes. We as responsible nations have to make discerning choices. Kosovo had to be settled, and the terms of the settlement were Kosovo specific.
And how do you think, in fact, Serbia, when the dust settles, how will they respond to what's happened?
Serbia cannot and will not take lightly the loss of a portion of what it saw as its national territory and heritage. We all have to accept that. Nations have histories, and Kosovo is a part of Serbia's culture. That said, there is a question of reality. 90% of the people in Kosovo are ethnic Albanians. The territory was brutally treated. The territory will never go back under Serbian rule. There is no formula that would make that possible. So learning to get on with what you don't like and move on and head towards Europe, where you can exercise your ambitions in the future inside a greater European whole, is a much better way to go than looking in the rearview mirror of history and trying to reconstitute an imperium that cannot be rebuilt.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you in a moment when we've heard from Dragan here from the Serbian point of view. You heard what the ambassador had to say there, and that you should be looking forward, not back, etc. What was your response to what the ambassador had to say?
Serbia does not want to look in the rear-view mirror. Serbia wants to go ahead to join the European Union. Serbia is interested in peace and stability. It needs peace and stability to grow and prosper. It's interested in peace in the region. It's interested in good neighborly relations. We strongly believe that the act of recognizing a part of the sovereign territory of Serbia as an independent country a new country in the fragile architecture of Southeast Europe is a very dangerous precedent. The arguments that are being put forward by Ambassador Wisner and some other important diplomats that this is a sui generis special case, I believe is a weak argument. The democratic government of Belgrade, which is in power, these people who are in power resisted Milosevic. Some of them risked their lives in fighting against that regime. We have had a democracy now for almost 8 years. We're striving to get into the European Union, and our country has been punished. A democratic, full-fledged member of the UN has been punished by the taking away of 15% of its territory. We understand the reality in Kosovo, 90% of Albanians. But this is a part of Serbia, according to our constitution. And what is most more important is that it's also a part of our country. And we believe that, according to the Charter of the United Nations, Resolution 1244, the Helsinki Final Act, it is illegal to make decisions to take away and amputate parts of territories and make them independent states. It does set a precedent. As my foreign minister said, it's a toolkit, it's a manual. All separatist movements in the world are looking at this through a microscope and saying, if Kosovo can be independent, why can't the Basque region be independent? Why can't Catalonia be independent? Why can't the Tamil Tigers get independence? It's scary out there. And it's also a message that rules don't count. We're talking about the necessity of rule of law. We're talking about the need for good governments. And yet, on an international scene, where decisions are being made, where rules are being ignored. The Charter of the United Nations is not just words on paper. Resolution 1244, which in 3 places reaffirms and confirms the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Serbia, is not a lightly adopted document. It has been ignored. And within the Security Council, many countries, many important countries, have said this is wrong. Within the European Union, important countries have said they do not agree. So we are in a tough situation. The Serbs are protesting, and may I add that the problems that we had yesterday with the rioting and the looting, this is extremists, and we condemn this. This is not the way to go, because we think that we have the moral high ground here. And if somebody is attacking embassies, it's only undermining our position, and that is absolutely wrong, and I condemn it.
Right, but the point about 90% being Albanians, and Albanians who saw themselves treated with ethnic cleansing and the like, that does make it your case difficult, though, doesn't it?
First of all, these Albanians are living in our reading of the situation. They are living in Kosovo, but they are living in Serbia. And they make up 15% of the population of Serbia. They are a minority if you look at the Serbia as a whole. And minorities should not be given the right to secede. Albanians live in Albania, and they live as minorities in Serbia. Their rights have to be fully respected, and it was very, very terrible that at one point in our history they were not respected. Does that mean they have the right to secede and create a state? We do not think it does. Serbia was offering the Albanians in Kosovo a very unprecedented amount of self-governance and self-rule. We were using Hong Kong models, total self-autonomy. If they could have offices around the world, they could run their show.
Right, right. At that point, let me go back to Frank Wisner in New York. You heard those eloquent words. What's your reaction to them, though?
Well, I guess Dragan and I have to disagree. I very frankly part company with him over the core fact, and that is Serbia's actions in the 1990s, not only destroying the autonomous nature of Kosovo, but moving on in acts of violence that drove nearly 1 million people out of the country, tens of thousands dead, countless scores in property, was uncommon, was unprecedented in the history of Southeastern Europe, and it has a consequence. No people are going to go back and expose themselves to that outcome. But I think even to address the point of legality, 1244, the United Nations Security Council resolution, which framed the settlement of Kosovo, assigns to the international community, not to Serbia, the responsibility for defining Kosovo's final status. And that's exactly where we are right now. that status could not revert to Serbia.
Right,
The
I'll come in there, Frank, if I
provisions-
may. Sorry, I'll come in there, Frank, just to put the point you
Please.
just
No,
made
go right ahead.
to Dragan. Yes, you heard what
One of
the ambassador had to say
Ambassador
there.
Wisner, one of the most basic elements of international criminal law is the individuality of guilt. And we have had an international criminal tribunal set up in The Hague. Many of our former leaders are in there and have been tried and convicted, and that is right. But you cannot take whole nations to account. It's not the Serbian people who are guilty. Serbs, in many cases during the 19th, were also great victims. We had almost 1 million of refugees coming from Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, displaced people. More than 200,000 people have fled from Kosovo. And so the Serbs have also been victims. And because of the wrongs of a former regime, you cannot make decisions and to punish a whole people, a whole nation, by taking away territory. This is a dangerous course to follow, with possible consequences and ramifications which can be very bad for the region and can be bad globally. And this is why this has to be looked at with so much care, and this is why millions of Serbs are on their feet and they cannot believe that a part of its territory, which was a sacred part, the cradle of our history and of our spirituality, has been amputated.
And we've just got time for a last sentence from you in New York, or a short paragraph, Frank?
Well, I pick up the last point. One has to face the fact that nations are people. 90% of the people are Albanians who suffered terribly. We're not talking about a prosecution and a defense in a court of law. No one's accusing Serbia. One has to take into account history and politics and the brutality of the 1990s, the inadequacy of Serbia's offers in the periods of negotiations left Kosovars determined to proceed and achieve their national identity. And since there was no return to Serbia and no continuation of international rule, there is absolutely no way forward except by independence. I think it can be successful. I am pleased my Serbian colleague, the Charge, is saying that peace is of primary importance. The events yesterday in Belgrade were extraordinarily distressing. The Serbian government is responsible for the protection of the diplomatic establishments that were attacked, and it is responsible for maintaining the peace with the new Kosovo. And I hope that that particular commitment will be respected in the days ahead.
Thank you very much. One sentence.
Serbia cannot accept the independence of Kosovo. We will continue with our European path, and we certainly want peace to prevail.
Thank you both for a really enlightening discussion. Thank you very much, Frank Wisner. Thank you very much, Dragan. A really riveting discussion there. And after the break, another riveting subject, Cuba without Fidel Castro. See you in a moment.